We're back. Thanks for hanging out with us. We do appreciate it. That is Tone in for Gunner today. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take. Let's smash the like button, friends. We would appreciate it if you get on a little run there. All right, Tone, let's look at the Eagles this year, just statistically, compared to what they were last year. All right.
Okay.
And again, 5-game sample size compared to 17. Understood. But this is regular season, not postseason last year. All right. So last year, let's start on the offensive side.
All right.
The Eagles were scoring 28.1 points per game, 28.1, which was good for third in the NFL last year. Okay.
All right.
This year, what do you think? Off the top of your head, what do you think they're scoring this year?
Oh, I want to say they're hanging around 26, 27.
They're 28.2. Believe it or not, they're scoring more points this year than they were last year per game. Now, this year, that only ranks you fifth, where last year it had you third. But
I think that Dolphins game, man, like it's like certain games that kind of like there are so many outlier games this year. You know what I mean? But it's still a good number. You're top 5 in scoring despite your struggles.
Yeah, I mean, you're still good. And, that's the thing. It doesn't – I agree with you. Like, if I just blindly said, they're probably scoring like 26, 27, I would have thought they were less than last year. I mean, it's almost identical. It's 28.2, 28.1. But nonetheless, we looked at them last year as this offensive machine that just ripped through people, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they're scoring a good amount of points this year too, this offensive unit. They've done it a little differently. It maybe doesn't look as smooth as it looked last year, but nonetheless, that's where they are through 5 games. All right, rushing game. So last year, Tone, they were averaging still pretty darn good, 147.6, which was 5th in the NFL. What do you think they're at this year? Rushing yards per game offensively.
160.
Close. 164.
Okay.
That's second. I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, they're averaging about 17 more yards per game on the ground than they were last year. We kind of went into this year saying, all right, it's going to be by committee. We don't know exactly who's going to be. Well, Swift has really emerged as the lead dog with this. Let me ask it. Do you worry about overuse with him considering his injury history?
I mean, we have to keep it in mind, but yes, I worry, but again, I'm of that mindset. When the game starts, I'm not worried about that. You know what I mean? Like it's like that kind of talk is kind of reserved for Monday through Saturday.
Right.
But once Sunday comes, I want the best guys on the field in the most high leverage situations, and I'm not worried about if they're going to get hurt or not. If there's anybody I'm worried about getting hurt, it's probably the quarterback, depending on because Jalen Hurts had this one run where I thought his knee just blew. but nonetheless, though, DeAndre Swift, I mean, let's really put this in perspective, man. DeAndre Swift is giving the Philadelphia Eagles some pretty great production right now. I mean, through 5 games, he has over 500 yards from scrimmage, and he's averaging just under 6 yards per carry. And I want to really put this in perspective for Eagles fans, because a lot of people, when we moved on from Miles Sanders, some people were split on it. I knew people personally that that were really upset that Miles Sanders didn't come back, and I told people the Eagles don't do business that way. They're not going to pay a running back that kind of money. And just to add more context to the conversation, Miles Sanders is right now on the season only has 190 rushing yards compared to DeAndre Swift's 434. And on top of that, Miles Sanders is only averaging 3 yards a carry. And in his last game, to make matters even worse for him, 7 carries, 32 yards, a 1 fumble, and one fumble lost. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are thinking about Miles Sanders in the slightest.
No.
Howard Roseman continues to do amazing work with that running back position in terms of just finding diamonds in the rough and putting those guys in position. But also on top of that, it's showing us that offensive line is really the catalyst behind the way things get done. But overall, DeAndre Swift, I'm really impressed with what he's done. I'm not worried about his injuries right now. The Philadelphia Eagles have one of the best training staffs in the NFL. I know the injury bug has bit the defensive side of the ball more than anything. But I'm not concerned, man. I'm really happy with what DeAndre Swift has given us, and on top of that, they're using him a lot more in the passing game, as we saw in that Rams matchup.
All right, let's pick it up. Stay on the offensive side. Let's look at the passing yards per game. The Eagles in 2022 averaged 241.5 per game. That was good for ninth. Okay. 241.5, which was ninth. Would you say they're over that or under that this year? 241.5 per game.
Ooh, I want to say they're just over that. Jalen Hurts has had a couple back-to-back 300-yard games. I want to say they're just over that. I want to say
okay.
250, 250 per game.
Okay. They're slightly under, slightly. They're averaging 240.4 as opposed to 241.5. So about a yard less per game. So they're right there. Now, that got you ninth best last year. It gets you 10th best this year. It just shows you like teams are scoring more. Teams are doing a little bit more offensively in the early going. I think that'll settle down a little bit as the season goes on. But
yeah. And also to put it in perspective as well, right now, because I think I looked a little deeper. I think that number is the net passing yards. That doesn't, that accounts for the loss of yards, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Jalen Hurts currently is on pace to throw for 4,200 yards. So we're going to see if that holds true. We never really know. But the passing game, it struggled, early on in the season. It's starting to come around. 2 back-to-back 300-yard games. Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball more. He has, I think he has like 4 games or 3 games where he's thrown the ball over 35 times or something like that. So, I'm not really too concerned about the pass yards. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, I'm content with him I'm totally content with him having 220, 240 passing yards, 60 rushing yards, because that's his game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And again, the point is, as much as we were concerned about the passing offense, it's not that far off from where it was last year. So if you look at it,
it just looks different. It just looks different. He
does. He looks different. Your eyeballs are telling you something different. Points per game, passing yards, very similar. They're much improved rushing. So, I mean, if you're checking boxes, you probably go give a lean to 2023 so far with what they're doing offensively. Now, let's go to the other side. Let's go defensively. Points per game. All right, last year they gave up 20.2. Okay, tied for 6th best in the NFL. This year, they're at 20.8. But that moves them all the way down to 11th.
It's not bad.
Okay.
I mean, if you're holding teams to 20 with this offense, if you're holding teams to 20 points or less, you should win every game.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to be in good shape. I think Jim Johnson used to want to hold teams to 17, but with this offense, if you hold
that's
to 20,
that's a better number for sure.
Yeah, that's very good. But if you hold a team to 20 in this day and age with this offense, I agree with you. You should be okay. But very close, 20.8 compared to 20.2. Okay. There's a massive difference in the next 2 categories. Yeah. This is where last year separates from this year separates from last year. Okay, let's go to the rushing game. This is defense, mind you. All right, last year they gave up 121.6 on the ground, which was 16th, very middle of the pack. Okay, this year 61.2.
Totally different output.
Totally different. Best in the NFL. That is massive. 60 less yards per game on the ground is big time. Okay. That's big time. These defensive tackles with the kids, with Carter and Davis, with Fletcher Cox and Milton Williams have just been awesome in terms of just nullifying and making teams one-dimensional.
Yeah. It just speaks to how bad Javon Hargrave was in run defense. And on top of that, it speaks to how far along Jordan Davis has come.
Yep.
And it just speaks to just how dynamic Jalen Carter is, right? He not only is a tremendous pass rusher, he's so stout and in defending the run. And on top of that, it's not just those guys as well. The guys on the edge are playing a lot better. They're holding the edge a lot better, and the linebackers are playing the run. In so many plays I've seen Anthony Murrow and Zach Cunningham, they're just in the action. They just they're just reading the gaps and just. This team is responding a lot better to the run, but, it starts with those big boys up front.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It does. No question. And maybe you give Desai some credit, I'll give this guy,
that's a good point. It could be a philosophy change as well. You never know.
I was surprised by this. So they blitzed about 30% of the game on Sunday against the Rams. So I think he's he's gone a little bit harder on that end of it than maybe Gannon did. They're never going to be a heavy blitz team, nor should they, because they have a really good defensive line. But I think he's been a little bit more aggressive than we've seen from Jonathan Gannon, and put his own twist on it, as you want that guy to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, you know, the vibe I've got from Desai over the past 5 games is I'm going to do what it takes to win this game. I don't really care about trends or what we used to do or whatever it is. You know, to me, he looks like a guy that, like, the perfect example was the Rams game. That first half, pass defense out, and I know you're about to bring up pass defense now.
Yeah.
First half, pass defense was putrid. Second half, out of nowhere, it was like they were a totally different team. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to, you know, what Sean Desai was asking of them, and also some personnel switches in the slot. Overall, man, I think I've really been impressed with Sean Desai overall, because he's dealt with a lot of injuries on that side of the ball, and he still managed to weather the storm and still keep his guys, you know, focused and locked in. And like I said, that second half, man, that's the best that pass defense has looked. And we thought they were going to. That's the best thing about this. It's the best quarterback they've gone up against since Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
They went up against an All-Pro wide receiver. In Cooper Kupp, this kid Puka Nacua is the hottest thing moving right now. Yeah. They could have had some real issues.
Oh yeah,
but they managed to weather the storm, man.
I agree. That it had you know, you're gonna have to put up 40 points written all over it, and they adjusted very well. All right, this Sunday aside, this is the worrisome stat here. All right, so last year the Eagles were number 1 in passing defense, 179.8 yards per game, number 1 in football. This year, 25th, 247.1. That's a major difference there.
What do you think is the stark difference though in the defenses right now? Because you still have Slay, you still have Bradbury.
Yeah.
Obviously Marcus Epps and CJ Gardner-Johnson aren't there. And that's a big deal.
Avonte too.
Avonte's not there as well. What do you think has been, and obviously you got a new coordinator, what do you think has been the stark difference between then and now? Because the scheme is pretty similar.
Yeah, I think it's the 3 things that you pointed out. I think CJ GJ not being there is a big deal. I think Epps, while he's never going to be confused for an All-Pro, is a solid, you know, player that you don't have to worry about necessarily. I think losing those 2 guys and then Avonte Maddox on top of it. Avonte Maddox was a way bigger injury than people accounted for. And I think they're still trying to figure that out. You know, I give Bradley Roby credit.
Yeah, man.
You know, he stepped in a difficult circumstance. I know Gunner said, you know, with his sources that he talked to, that, you know, he wasn't quite in football shape yet, which is understandable. You know, he's been sitting out for the last few weeks. But think about this. He got targeted 6 times. He allowed 2 receptions, -4 yards. Like, he did the job. He came in and did a good job. He clearly stemmed, you know, some of the bleeding here that was going on in that game, while the coaches made adjustments too. But he deserves a lot of credit. And I think if they can get him up to speed, I made the analogy yesterday. Maybe he's Patrick Robinson from.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That was a good pull by you, because you know, it's so funny, right? Even during the Super Bowl season, when the Eagles won in 2017, going into the 2018 Super Bowl technically, but even in that season, right? I don't think any of us really thought that was a Super Bowl roster at the time. Right? And that sure things swing your way. And obviously they caught momentum, and then, you know, it got to a point in the season where you said, yeah, maybe this team can win it all. Yeah. But still, right, we've been disappointed so many times before, and we've had better rosters and still haven't been able to get the job done, right? So my point in saying all that is that Eagles roster last year may have been more loaded on the defense side of the ball. Maybe they were better in certain stat categories.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can have a lesser roster and have greater success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, for example,
the sum of the parts is greater than.
Yeah. You know, it's I don't really. It's something you can't really quantify, but, you know, I'll put it in perspective like this. You know, the Eagles' schedule was significantly harder this year than it was last year, right?
That's true.
So it's easy to get fat off of those pass defense stats. You know, when you're not going to be going up against too many top tier quarterbacks. But, you know, at the same time, look at it like this, right? Jalen Hurts. You know, he can improve as a quarterback, but the Eagles may have a lesser record, right? They may be 12-4, or 12-5, or 13-4 instead of being 14-3, right? You know, so your record isn't always indicative of how good you really are. Sometimes, you know, a monster meets a bigger monster, right?
Yeah.
So I think all things considered, based on what we've seen from this Philadelphia Eagles team, they're trending in the direction that we want. We see them improving every single week. You know, it would be a problem if things were getting worse every week, you know, right? But they're getting better every week. It seems like the things are starting to slow down for Jalen Hurts. It seems like everyone's starting to really understand what's being asked of them. They just got to get healthy. And I think, honestly, after that bye week, I think the Eagles are going to be clicking on all cylinders.
Well, I think you make a good point too. You know, you have to take everything into account. Granted, they haven't played the really hard part of the schedule yet.
Right.
But last year's schedule was, let's face it, it wasn't nearly as challenging as this one, you know, is. You take on a Rams team that does have Stafford, that does have Kupp, that does have Puka Atua, who was, setting basically, NFL marks through the first 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
You face Mike Evans. You know, you face some teams with some guys who can get after it. You're short there a little bit because of some of the guys that walked, and you also had some injuries. So all these things have to take into account. I want to swing back to something I was talking about with the defensive line. So Pro Football Focus put out their rookie D tackle grades, and I said yesterday I'm lifting the rookie part from anything when it comes to Jalen Carter because I think he is just that guy.
Right. That boy's a dog.
But let me just give you what PFF has for him in terms of where he ranks with the rookie D tackles. All right. Graded out overall, he's first. Sacks, he's first. Pressures, he's first. That's 23 pressures, by the way, 3.5 sacks. Win rate. In other words, how many times he's beating his man. 20.9, first. So he's first overall, first in sacks, first in pressures, and first in win rate. You know, like, again, I think he's got a really good chance to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I also think, Tone, he's got a shot to be a Pro Bowler with the way he's playing.
Man. This dude, Jalen Carter, man, 3.5 sacks through his first 5 games, 4 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and he's a gamer. You know what? That Rams matchup told me a lot about him, and this is why. He's been compared to Aaron Donald all throughout, you know, these first 5 games in terms of quarterback, in terms of pass rush win rate, and, you know, quarterback hurries and hits and all that kind of stuff. He's been right there with Aaron Donald, and he's played significantly less snaps, right? So when you're constantly being compared to a guy like that, they want to see how you guys fare, especially when you're on the same field playing at the same time. So we saw Aaron Donald, you know, we know what Aaron Donald's resume is, but I'm talking about on that day alone.
Yeah. We
saw Aaron Donald pretty much get shut down by a backup right guard in Sua Opeta. Obviously, Kelsey and Lane, you know, helped, but it was plenty of times where Sua Opeta was on the island with Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald was a non-factor. He ended up leaving that game with only 1 quarterback hurry and nothing else. Jalen Carter, when he had his opportunity to shine in LA under the bright lights with, you know, one of the best D tackles on the other side of the field watching him play, he shined. 2 sacks, right? 2 impactful sacks, and was just wreaking havoc through and through. Jalen Carter showed up when it mattered most. He showed up when one of the best was on the other side of the field. He showed up when Fletcher Cox was out. He had to play more snaps. So that tells me he knows how to elevate his game when asked upon. That speaks volumes to me. You know how many guys that when you actually put the pressure on them, they kind of shrink a little bit? Mm-hmm. That man was built for the big time. And on top of that, all the off the field stuff that people talked about all off season, oh, he's not a hard worker, he doesn't take the game serious, all that kind of stuff. The way that boy been talking, the way that boy been playing, man, I see the complete opposite. I see somebody who's locked in on the game. I see a guy who understands the Philadelphia culture. I see a guy who understands what's being asked of him. And again, he's only 5 games in to his career. He doesn't even know what he doesn't know yet.
Well, that's the other. Yeah, he's still learning. Like, granted, he came into the league very NFL ready. It's clear.
Very NFL ready. Blue chip easily.
Yeah, like he's crazy talented. He was clearly coached well because he's got so many moves. Like,
so many moves.
There's not much not to love. And I know, like, here's the thing that happens sometimes. Teams always say all the right things. Oh, he's been a great presence around the team and blah, blah, blah. And you say to yourself, okay, is that really what's happening? But we know, Tone, some stuff would have come out had we heard about him either being a diva or difficult or a problem child so far. Like, hopefully what went down, you know, at the end of his career or after his playing career at Georgia, but before getting drafted, hopefully that was the wake-up call to this guy. And he is just a much different man, and he approaches things differently. All I know is if you're just talking about pure talent, you could make a case he's the most talented guy that came out of the draft. I know we're quarterback nuts, but I'm just telling you, find me somebody who's been more impactful at their position so far.
If there was a redraft, he would go number 1 overall. Let's be totally honest. You know, here's my thing, man. He couldn't have landed, you know, this can't be understated. Jalen Carter couldn't have landed in a better situation. He's in Philadelphia, a winning culture, right? He has veterans, but not just any kind of veterans. He has a veteran in Fletcher Cox that's played this game at the highest of high levels. He's surrounded by Super Bowl champions, guys who've made it to the promised land, guys who knows what it looks like to be great, knows what it feels like to be great. On top of that, he got drafted with his homeboy Nolan Smith, and he's surrounded by his other Georgia Bulldogs as well. Like, he's just he's in an incubator. He's in the perfect situation to help him reach his full potential.
Yeah. Yeah. He's in the best position to make him thrive, to help him thrive. And again, when I say, you know, he's had more of an impact than anybody else, other guys have played well. CJ Stroud has done a nice job. Anthony Richardson's done a nice job.
Bijan's played pretty well.
Yeah, I like Witherspoon, the kid out of Seattle. Like, it's not like everybody's been a bust in front of him, and that just speaks to how good he's been. He's been that good. So, look, man, and he isn't even playing, you know, a huge amount of snaps either yet. Just wait till that becomes the case.
And D tackle's not a sexy position. You know what I mean?
No, it's
like,
not. It's
like all those other guys play the sexy positions. You know,
yes,
corner.
The edge is sexy. Defensive tackle is not. Yeah.
It's an ugly position, man. And those guys get down in the mud, and he flashes off. He jumps off the page. He jumps off the screen when he plays, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's rare that you find tackles that young who can also get to the quarterback so well. And that's him too. And it was weird. Like, Davis didn't play a lot of snaps last week, and whatever, maybe it was something in the matchup they saw. I don't know. But I would like to see him get back to, it was weird because especially with Fletcher Cox out, but I would like to see him get back to, you know, kind of where things were earlier in the season for him also, because I just think these two together, man, are just such beasts. I mean, it is going to be fun to watch for a long time. All right, we'll come back. We're going to look at the positives, Tone, and the negatives of what we've seen so far, what we like, what we feel good about as they embark on the really difficult part after this week. And then, you know, as far as the negatives, we will dive into both of those things. Coming up at 12:30, Greg Murphy, who does the Phillies pre- and post-game shows on radio, we'll talk to him about that devastating loss last night, what kind of shape he thinks they're going to be in for tomorrow. We'll do our full-blown NFL segment. There are some significant NFL injuries, Tone, in that segment to talk about, like some big names, man, which we will, including a Jet, which we'll dive into when we come back. So he's Tone DeShields in for Gunner today. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take. I want to tell you right now about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. In fact, I reached out to Jim about a question that I had, and he was right there to answer it. Answer the phone right away, had the time to talk to me about it, and we kind of dug into it. And that's invaluable. I can tell you that from personal experience, because it took me a long time to find the right person to trust with my finances. And I trust Jim and Principal Financial Group, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. You might have a small business and you need help with your employee benefits. That's another resource that Jim can assist you with. Personally, I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You could also email him, Murray, MURRAY, .jim@principal.com. That's murray.jim@